Scientific death of Jesus. For the next 60 seconds, set aside whatever you're doing and take this opportunity. Let's see if Satan can stop this. At the age of 33, Jesus was condemned to death. At the time, crucifixion was the worst death. Only the worst criminals were condemned to be crucified. Yet it was even more dreadful for Jesus. Unlike other criminals condemned to death by crucifixion, Jesus was to be nailed to the cross by his hands and feet. Each nail was 6 to 8 inches long. The nails were driven into his wrist, not into his palms as is commonly portrayed. There's a tendon in the wrist that extends to the shoulder. The Roman guards knew that when the nails were being hammered into the wrist, that tendon would tear and break, forcing Jesus to use his back muscles to support himself so that he could breathe. Both of his feet were nailed together. Thus he was forced to support himself on the single nail that impaled his feet to the cross. Jesus could not support himself with his legs because of the pain, so he was forced to alternate between arching his back then using his legs just to continue to breathe. Imagine the struggle, the pain, the suffering, the courage. Jesus endured this reality for over 3 hours. Yes, over 3 hours. Can you imagine this kind of suffering? A few minutes before he died, Jesus stopped bleeding. He was simply pouring water from his wounds. From common images, we see wounds to his hands and feet and even the spear wound to his side. But do we realize his wounds were actually made in his body? A hammer driving large nails through the wrist, the feet overlapped, and an even large nail hammered through the arches, then a Roman guard piercing his side with a spear. But before the nails and the spear, Jesus was whipped and beaten. The whipping was so severe that it tore the flesh from his body, the beating so horrific that his face was torn and his beard ripped from his face. The crown of thorns cut deeply into his scalp. Most men would not have survived this torture. He had no more blood to bleed out, only water poured from his wounds. The human adult body contains about 3.5 liters, just less than a gallon of blood. Jesus poured all 3.5 liters of his blood. He had 3 nails hammered into his members, a crown of thorns on his head, and, beyond that, a Roman soldier who stabbed a spear into his chest. All this without mentioning the humiliation he suffered after carrying his own cross for almost 2 kilometers while the crowd spat in his face and threw stones. The cross was almost 30 kilo of weight, only for its higher part where his hands were nailed. Jesus had to endure this experience to open the gates of heaven, so that you can have free access to God, so that your sins could be washed away. All of them, with no exception. Jesus Christ died for you. He died for you. It is easy to pass jokes or foolish photos by email, but when it comes to God, sometimes you feel ashamed to forward to others because you are worried of what they may think about you. God has plans for you. Show all your friends what He experienced to save you. Now think about this. May God bless your life. 6 na po seconds with God. For the next 6 na po seconds, set aside what you are doing and take this opportunity. Let's see if Satan can stop this. All you have to do is simply pray for the person who sent this message to you. 2. Then, send this message to people. The more the better. 3. People will pray for you and you will make that many people pray to God for other people. 4. Take a moment to appreciate the power of God in your life. 4. Doing what pleases Him. If you are not Ashamed to do this, please follow Jesus' instructions. He said, Matthew 32 minuto pasado alas 10:33, everyone therefore who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven, but whosoever denies me before others, I will deny before my Father in heaven.